他是一个老外，他也是个中国通。
这么老的一个人，他们觉得有点奇怪。
8年时间，他的出现为宝马创造了什么业内奇迹？
Did you expect to do something big when you joined the company?
We are all customers ourselves. I'm a big fan of listening to the market. The market normally is telling you what to do, what you shouldn't do.
在中国做生意，他又有着什么独特的生意经？
What we do, in fact, at the moment, we have a little project running to understand the 80后、90后。
Some 富二代 right?
开好车就一定是好人吗？
Were showing off, were they got themselves into troubles? I would rather, cry in the backseat of a BMW. How did you evaluate the impact on the BMW brand of those incidents?
杨澜访谈录对话宝马集团大中华区总裁兼首席执行官史登科博士，尊重、倾听和改变。
大家好，欢迎收看杨澜访谈录。从2002年到2012年，中国的汽车市场增长迅猛，被称为是中国汽车的黄金10年。这10年当中，无论是本土品牌还是国际品牌，可以说是逐鹿中原，硝烟四起。而这当中就有若干人物特别被人们津津乐道，其中之一就是宝马汽车大中华区的总裁兼首席执行官史登科博士。他是一位德国人，却有着一个非常地道的中国名字。在他任职的100个月之内，宝马汽车在中国的销量增长了20倍，被人们称为是行业的一个奇迹。在他即将离任的时候，业内呢也纷纷用再见史登科向他致敬，可见他的影响已经超越了一个简单的品牌经理人。
2013年2月，宝马集团大中华区总裁兼首席执行官史登科正要离开宝马，宣布退休。此时恰恰是他在宝马履职的第100个月。8年的时间里，史登科留给宝马中国的是20倍的业绩增长。媒体纷纷以再见史登科来表达对这样一个传奇人物的怀念。那么这位精通中文、深谙中国经营之道的史登科，他的身上究竟有哪些特别的故事呢？
How did you get this Chinese name, 史登科? Because it really has some historical meanings in the Chinese language.
First, when I came to China, naturally my Chinese was very poor. It was much poorer than it is today. So first you are given a name by the institute, the Waiban, they're giving you a name, and in my case it was Shidake or Sitake, so it sounded a bit strange. It doesn't sound Chinese at all.
No.
So then I met some friends at the Peking University, and he was very knowledgeable. And we sat together and said, hey, we need to find yourself a Chinese name. And then we first came up with the Shi, and I thought this first of all was quite nice because I'm very interested in history. So Li Shi de Shi, it also happens to be a surname. And then we thought about how we can find something that's phonetically close to my real English name or my home name, my born name, but still Chinese. And then he came up with this Dunke. So it sounds a little bit, Shidunke sounds a little bit like Stark, but it has a certain meaning. So then we choose that name. So he was very instrumental in that and got stuck since then. So I'm using that name since
It's
then.
a quite a prosperous name. Yeah, Dunke, Wuzi Dunke, right?
Yeah.
Really get being renowned or
at that time I didn't really know the whole thing behind it, but I gradually came to know more.
But that was in mid-80s, right?
That was in 1980, in fact.
史登科上世纪50年代出生于德国明斯特，80年代来到中国北京大学就读于历史系。年轻的时候，史登科不仅骑着自行车转遍了北京城，还坐着当年的绿皮火车游历了中国许多城市。当年的他或许未曾想到，机缘巧合的20年后，他将在这片土地上开创自己以及宝马中国的一段新的旅程。
But then, how did a man whose major was history jumped into the automobile industry?
Well, I think so many things in life just happen by chance. I mean, when I studied history, I never had the idea that one day I would end up in China or be in a corporation or in BMW for that matter. So you do things at the time where you're interested in, especially when you're young, you don't care too much about future planning.
It was about adventure.
I thought, well, I would like to come to China, learn a little bit of the language, came here, and then later I went back and thought maybe I should stay in research. Become a scholar, and then I thought it's probably not the right thing to do, only to watch what other people are doing. So I went into business, and then later on I came to BMW. But what I think is helpful is that the real reason to study history is probably to know about people, because to study history is nothing about else than studying people, how people interact, the psychology between things, why things fail, why they are successful, why sometimes there's progress, sometimes they go back. So it helps you at the end of the day. It still helps you quite a big deal to understand people.
I happened to visit your museum in Munich a few years back. That was a part of history too. I guess instead of just studying history, you are trying to make some history in this brand's performance in China. Did you expect to do something big when you joined the company in 2004?
No, I don't think you set out with the idea of making history. I think this would be much too big a notion. You start somewhere and you try to improve things, to make an impact, to really develop what your job is.
2012年，宝马在华的销量达到了30万辆，而2004年史登科上任之初，当时宝马在华销量低迷，仅有1.5万辆左右。2004年9月，史登科被宝马从扬州亚星奔驰有限公司 CEO 的位置挖角，就任宝马大中华区总裁兼首席执行官。
What part attracted you most from this position at that time?
The challenge, enormous opportunities behind it.
What was the challenge and what was the opportunity that you could foresee?
The challenge was a difficult situation. It was
How difficult?
One of the few situations where BMW in China actually the sales went south. So they decreased, but the brand, the whole setup had enormous opportunities. The company had just come here with a local joint venture, so they were serious about it to do something here, but somehow it got stalled or got stuck. So to unravel this was the challenge, but the opportunities were great, and I think this was the point, finding these opportunities and then realize them. When I came in, sales were about 15,000. That was in 2004, and the situation wasn't very good. People didn't know why it had become so difficult. At that time, you can't say in 8 years we do 300,000. That would be too ridiculous. Nobody would follow you. However, what we try to do is to set 2-3 year targets, relatively ambitious targets, and once you do the first 2-3 successful steps, then it's easier to build on this success and push the objectives further. So you don't have this clear idea, exact numbers, but you want to improve it, and you want to improve it quickly. Speed in a market like China is very important, but surely you don't have this very fixed figure or number in your head.
2005年，同类在华高端车某品牌宣布涨价，史登科却在此时宣布国产宝马3系和5系价格下调5到10万元。当时宝马在中国的业务刚刚起步，而降价行动在宝马全球范围绝无仅有。史登科的宝马中国市场攻略走出了令人惊讶的一步。
Isn't cutting price a taboo for a high-end brand as BMW?
It was a taboo at that time. Until then, the situation was that the locally produced products didn't move very well. People didn't really quite know at that time why we got stuck. So we sat down and we discussed it a lot. We had a lot of brainstorming. We found out the market just didn't accept the old prices, the old official prices. So what we did in effect was using the prices the market had given the products already and make them official. And so what we call the transaction prices, and made them official prices. And I needed to have something like a big bang to make everybody aware BMW is serious about competing. It is seriously open its customer base. It's coming out of a certain confined corner and is trying to win more customers. And that's then was this big bang, and it worked very well. And at that time there was a lot of discussion also with the friends from the media. They said, do you do this all the time? I said, no, one time and one time only. And we did it only once.
What was the response from inside and outside? Did you have a united line behind you or before you? No.
Well, the inside took a little bit of discussion and intensive brainstorming and persuasion. Then we came to the point we said this is the only way we need to do in order to increase sales. In the external response, there were some critical voices, there were some very big headlines, outrageous headlines, but at the end of the day the effect was very positive. The feedback, I would say, was over 90% very positive.
But that was from the customers.
Customers.
How about competitors? They would say, oh, this guy jumps into this water and stir things up.
Yeah, you see, if you want to compete, you need to steer things up. But you need to stand your ground, and it was very clear for us this would be one-time action. It was for 2 products only. You know, if you want to move, you move, and if somebody feels you're steering up something, it's not a bad thing.
But would you suggest to adopt the same strategy in today's market?
No.
No.
No, you can't.
Why?
You can't reproduce or copy things that may be right at one point of time, may be wrong the next day. So you always need to do things in accordance with the situation. So nowadays everything is much more established, the competition more established, the market is much more mature. So you wouldn't do things like that.
What if today your competitor jumps in and try to reduce their price? What would your response to be?
Not much I can comment on this, but I can say in last year, about a year ago, 11 months ago to be exact, somebody tried it and it failed miserably. So it just shows you can't repeat things and get the same result.
Why? Because the market is different now?
The market is more mature, customers are more discerning, and you see nowadays you need to compete more on the marketing side, on the brand side, because the market is more mature. And then if you do drastic things like that in a more mature market, people just wait for the next price reduction.
史登科的价格战策略之后，中国内地成为宝马集团在全球增长最快的市场，增速为52.4%。销售业绩增长的同时，但随之而来的大量的售后服务压力，马上又给史登科出了一道难题。
慢慢后期就车开始多了，我们维修力量简直感觉就力不从心有点。
可能存在一种排队修车的这样一种场面。
一般来说，那时候有可能是一个事故车的话，他可能要等2个月、3个月、4个月才能拿车。
So what do you have to do to improve the service quality throughout the nation? I know that you shorten the repair time to push it within 2 hours and also unify the service prices. Was that hard to do?
Sometimes I believe very much in basics. For me, business is pretty, if you do the basics right, it's fine. And one of the basics is you need to be transparent. And we all know to sell it, the first car is relatively easy, but the second, third car will be sold by the service quality and so on. We are all customers ourselves, and I know what I'm interested in as a customer. I want to have transparency. I don't want to have a black box. I want to know what they are doing at what price. Very simple. So we said we need to do this in a unified way in China. But then people said, no, you can't have the same price in Harbin and Kunming, and the climate is different. So all sorts of
Transportation,
reasons,
you know,
but you say,
delivery.
I don't care. I want to have the same prices, and then we want to have these prices published. So what we did is then, and coming back to your point, it wasn't so easy because you need to change mindsets of people.
But change is difficult.
Change
right?
is difficult.
Not just changing policies and car models, it's about changing people and changing people's behavior patterns and so on and so forth. What was more difficult, to change the policies to the customers or the inside management?
The mindset. To change
the mindset of management.
The mindset is always the most difficult to change because people like their habits and they don't want to change. So to initiate changes in the mindset and the attitude is the most difficult, but it's also the most required. You change policies, you sit down, you write a piece of paper, you publish a policy.
Yeah.
But if you really want to have it lived by, you need to change the mindset, the attitude of people. And it's naturally more difficult. When this was successful, suddenly everybody wants to do it. So it's a kind of, the first step is most difficult, but once it's moving, other people buy in and say, yeah, why didn't we think about it before?
When people talk about your achievements in this position, they mention a key word as localization. By that word, what is the implication? Localization of what?
Localization is important and true in every market, every major market. You can't operate in any major market without relying on the local resources, whether this is US or Germany or China for that matter. It always became a little bit particular here because most foreign companies, they come here with a lot of foreign executives and then they try to control everything. On the other side, I think if you come here, you don't understand the market, you can't watch TV, you don't understand what's going around you. How can you possibly operate? So localization here is a little bit more difficult, but it's even more necessary.
So it's not just about production facilities or the dealers network, but also understanding of people.
Well, first of all, it's about understanding the market. And the first thing we did, or you probably do, is you localize production, you localize suppliers, then you localize your dealer partners, then you localize your management team, and you need to adapt also the management culture. And I think this is one of the absolute key success factors behind what we did.
针对中国市场的本土化，是史登科一直坚持并不断强调的。继2006年宝马5系长轴距版首次推出之后，2010年8月，华晨宝马再次推出为中国市场量身打造的第2代5系长轴距版。加长意味着风险，这触及到品牌自诞生起就已经延续100年的品牌传承和运动基因，纯粹以驾驶乐趣为核心，为中国市场而加长了轴距。史登科的这一改变，不断接受着来自内外的各种质疑和挑战。
I was just wondering, how difficult was it to persuade your German headquarters? Because there was a saying that Germans do have a square head, which means they sometimes are very stubborn in terms of changes the fundamentals, right?
Yeah, well, you may say, I know in China you say that 方头. Sometimes necessity helps you in bringing progress. So if you really want to compete and you don't get the results you want to, you start thinking a little bit out of the box. So that helped us. And the 5 Series long wheelbase also was part of this localization. You localize products to adapt to what the market is telling you. And I'm a big fan of listening to the market. The market normally is telling you what to do, what you shouldn't do. And then we try to get this message back to the headquarters, and then I would say there were a lot of discussions, rightfully so, because you can't do this in a very light-hearted fashion. Then they agreed, we went very quickly, and it was a big success. And then the successor model, we started from the first day, there was no more discussion at all. It had to be long wheelbase, and it was then much easier progress.
Was everything as smooth as that? I suspect.
Well, in hindsight, things look much more smooth than actually happened. But you see, you're used to nothing can be just very smooth.
But did you have? How hard did you have to argue for this idea?
Well, you come with facts and figures. Actually, it happened after we brought the 5 Series. The 7 Series even boomed even more. So there were arguments, but we came with facts and figures, and then it was accepted.
成功的背后，他曾经历过何种艰辛和失败。
If I can use the example of 宝马之越, what we do, in fact, at the moment, we have a little project running to understand the 80后、90后。
遭遇品牌危机，他又如何步步化解？
开好车就一定是好人吗
？Some 富二代 were showing off where they got themselves into troubles. I would rather, cry in the backseat of a BMW.
To tell people we are open, we are a friendly brand, we are open to everybody, we are not just stuck in one corner.
中国汽车市场的黄金10年即将远去，还是会重新来到？稍后请继续收看《杨澜访谈录》专访史登科博士，尊重、倾听和改变。
这里记录的是一个人和他的时代。
1946年，中国第一位原子物理女硕士王光伟放弃去美国读博士的机会，离开北平，奔赴延安，第一次见到了刘少奇。此时，季羡林刚刚从德国回到北平，成为北京大学教授，继续潜心研究梵文和吐火罗文。1982年，季羡林回到母校济南一中参加校友聚会。不远处的济南二中，17岁的巩俐最大的心愿是能考上一所师范学校。2006年，巩俐来到英国参加电影《迈阿密风云》的首映。不远处的克劳伦斯宫里，58岁的查尔斯正和卡米拉庆祝他们结婚1周年。此时，泳池里的菲尔普斯正备战北京奥运。在水立方，他一人夺得8枚金牌的传奇，将令世界为之惊叹。21世纪的第1个10年，杨澜访谈录走进这些历史风云人物，以独特视角为您讲述一个人和他的时代。
We have been talking about these ideas and the concepts, which are very good. But then could you share with us some of the stories behind those stories? For example, I'm very curious to understand what were some of the mistakes that you learned most from?
If I can use the example of 宝马如何 we came out with this concept in spring 2010, but we tried much earlier. We tried in 2005 and the years following, but we did not succeed. We failed because we just didn't find the right clue. We tried 2 times, we couldn't find the right sort of translation or way to approach this issue of joy.
You mean the translation of sheer driving pleasure to Chinese?
We trying to find something, not just the translation. 假设乐趣 was used for a long time, but I didn't really quite like it. It's too shallow or too generic. We kept the English slogan for a long time because I wasn't happy with the Chinese one.
宝马这个以生产飞机发动机起家的企业，缔造了无数汽车运动史上的佳话。近100年的品牌传承的核心就是驾驶乐趣。对于精通中文的史登科来说，驾驶乐趣这4个字的翻译，并不能在新的时代下为中国客户凝练出宝马的品牌精髓。
Everything we said, everything we do is about people. We sell high-tech products, but what we do, the whole business is about people. You develop product by people, for people to use. And then we say we need to center everything around people, and then finally we got the clue and came up with 宝马如何. So it's a long process where you fail, but in the end, if you try hard enough, you come up with something.
I bet you're also very much aware of the social sentiment which is now developing in this country. For example, there have been some incidents involving a BMW vehicle. Some 富二代, right? So-called 富二代 were showing off, or they got themselves into trouble.
开好车就一定是好人吗？高科技啊，无人驾驶啊，没看到啊？别摸我！救命！救命！
And we had this dating show when the girl said, I would rather, cry in the backseat of a BMW instead of, laughing in the backseat of a bicycle, which aroused a lot of social outcry. How did you evaluate the impact on the BMW brand out of those incidents? Were they necessarily bad?
At the beginning, there was an impact, and the impact is also because of the way at that time we as a company responded. Naturally, you don't have much to do with it because your car has been used as a label.
That's right.
But still, it's the way how you responded, and that was also part of the reason coming back to this price adjustment. I needed to have a big bang to open the company to the public, to tell people we are open, we are a friendly brand, we are open to everybody, we are not just stuck in one corner. That's why I needed this big bang to make everybody aware. And it has worked in a certain way, and we follow up with many other actions to open up the brand, to go to the customer, whether it's customers talk or events. We have so many events when we invite people, and then we get within 2 weeks 30, 60,000 applications. So this connection with the market, with the customer, helps us to get away out of this corner, out of this label. You just can't come in, roll in here and think you know everything. And that's why many people who were successful in other places, very successful, they come here, continue their old ways, and they fail. Because they just don't understand this listening. You can't come here and say, I know everything. I mean, if I would go to a place I don't understand the language, I would be pretty ineffective. So you need to understand first, and you need to rely on people that know better. And that's why I relied so much on my local colleagues, because they know much better than me. They tell me, hey, don't go this way, you better be careful here.
中国汽车市场的黄金10年即将远去，还是会重新来到？
You can't cut corners. If you cut corners just to catch some market today, you will feel it tomorrow.
It may backfire.
全新一代的消费主体，他对未来的市场又有何种理解？
What we do, in fact, at the moment, we have a little project running to understand the 80后、90后。
稍后请继续收看《杨澜访谈录》专访史登科博士，尊重、倾听和改变。
我并不是一个标准的商人，我有我自己要寻找的目标，我确立之后，我会比较坚定的往那走。
As I learned to be independent, I picked myself up. I wasn't housewife Madeline, I was Dr. Albright.
杨澜访谈录为您奉献这些激励过我们的瞬间与永恒，去体验一个时代的进步。2002至2012年被称为中国汽车市场的黄金10年，汽车年销售规模从300万辆起步，在2011年末冲到了1800万辆的高点。在这黄金10年中，追求高端化是中国市场的汽车消费主题之一。如今，第二个10年已经开幕，中国的年轻一代也逐步成为汽车消费的主流群体。
Do you think the golden age is already past?
It's hard to say. I still remember, if you go 10 years back, at the beginning of this century, the commercial vehicle market in China was bigger than the passenger car market. That means you sold more buses and trucks and vans than passenger cars, which is quite unique. So the passenger car market really was booming in the last 10 years. Now you can't have the same growth rates year over year if you have already such a base as you just mentioned.
Yeah.
So the growth rates need to come down, and they have come down. But if you add 10% on 10 million, it's still 1 million, right? So in absolute terms, China is still adding the biggest absolute numbers to the market every year.
But what is the impact on the automobile industry then?
Competition is increasing, it's becoming more sophisticated, the market is maturing, and you need to find all ways, possible ways and means to compete. You can't cut corners. If you cut corners just to catch some market today, you will feel it tomorrow. You will feel
it may backfire.
You have the setback the next day then, or next year.
How about the rising younger generation? How do you think they are different from their parents' generation in terms of the taste of vehicles and the cars they want to buy?
Well, you tell me. I mean, what we do, in fact, at the moment, we have a little project running to understand the 80后, 90后, to understand how they think, how they, and it's not so homogeneous anymore as in the past. You have more different people in a generation with different tastes and different desires, so you need to also be a little bit more diversified. And I think this is part of what we see the maturing. You see, many years back you had this typical 3-box, only a sedan. Now people want to have hatchbacks, they want to have sporty cars, smaller cars. So you see a diversification, SUVs, all these things. So I think the young generation, they are more into electronic gadgets, into entertainment systems, that you can do a lot of things connecting your car. What we do now, for example, you set the music in your computer and then you can download it onto your car. You have a lot of connections, traffic information, so they play more with these kind of things. Normally because they grow up with a computer, they grow up with their smartphones, so all these things get into cars more. Not necessarily cars will always get bigger. I think younger people will in the future might buy more smaller cars.
Yeah. Because they will drive them themselves.
Drive them themselves, and you have parking space, and it's not always every time bigger is necessarily better, so you can also be better by being smaller.
中国有句古话，以不变应万变，而史登科的故事却似乎告诉我们要变中求变，以变应变。当今天的人们还津津乐道于它在价格、市场、品牌等方面的种种策略的时候，史登科却认为时过境迁，拿这些招数再来应付今天的市场，反而容易招致失败。比这些表面的因素更重要的是人。是要学会倾听，学会尊重，学会改变。好，感谢你收看本期的《杨澜访谈录》，我们下周见。人们突然听到一个老外说很地道的中文，会不会觉得很奇怪？很吃惊。如
果是这么老的一个人，他们觉得有点奇怪。现在年轻人说的中文说的比较多了。
What fascinates you still in this country after staying here for 2 decades?
It is still probably the most dynamic place on earth, getting more international, and there's still many new things happening. I very much enjoyed those places a little bit off. I mean, off the what remote. You call off the beaten track, remote. You know, where you can venture in, and you like the triangle, Xizang, Sichuan, Yunnan. This part where you have a lot of mountains, rivers, a lot of different nationalities. You just go there and enjoy it and talk to them. It's very fun. I think very interesting encounters, things like that.